Hey, how's it going, guys? Mr. Boss for the win here, and in today's Grand Theft Auto 5 video, I'm going to be talking to you guys about something you probably didn't know about in the Grand Theft Auto series, and that's actually the Australian-American War. That's right, this is something that I've kind of known about briefly, but I didn't know all the details and all the pieces, and thanks to some articles on the GTA Wiki, I'm able to kind of tell you guys today the background, the story, and some of the references in Grand Theft Auto games. And it's crazy, there was an entire fictional war that has gone on between the almost entirety of the Grand Theft Auto series. So obviously, the Australian-American War was a fictional war fought between the United States of America and Australia. Now, this war was mentioned in Grand Theft Auto 3, GTA Vice City, San Andreas, and Grand Theft Auto 4, and there are many references to it in Grand Theft Auto 5, which I'll actually be showing to you guys today. So let's start from the beginning, and let's start with all the details that we know so far. We'll begin in GTA 3. The very first mention of this war actually occurred on Laszlo's radio station, Chatterbox FM. He had a veteran of the war, Colonel James P., call in and actually talk about how no one cares about the Australian-American War. Laszlo then goes on to joke that he's never heard of it, and then the vet talks about how the Australians are equipping boomerangs and kangaroos attached with explosives to help aid their cause. So very early on, it looks as if the Australians had the advantage. I mean, kangaroos are some intense animals, and when you pair them with explosives, obviously that's getting really intense. Now, there's little detail known about the war itself, and it's unknown who actually won the war, whether it was the Australians or the Americans, or even if the war was actually fought, because there's always the possibility that it was made up in the caller's head. Now, we don't know the exact date of the war itself, but we can guess from some of the callings and some of the details known about these characters that it likely took place in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, at least bits and pieces of it. Now, let's flash forward to GTA Vice City, and in Vice City, the war is implied to have occurred as far back as 1986, as it was mentioned in a radio commercial for ammunition. So the commercial talks about anti-aircraft guns that had stated used when we whooped the Australians' ass, and I think that's pretty funny. And obviously, according to ammunition, it implies that the United States won the war. And even the website created by Kent Paul, his 80s nostalgia zone, states that hostilities between Australia and the United States began in 1980. So there's definitely some conflicting facts and dates and who was involved and what was going on, but it's pretty crazy, obviously, all the references to this war. So let's move on to GTA San Andreas, where the war was only loosely referenced in early San Andreas after the earthquakes rocked the state. And in a WCTR news brief, Richard Burns, one of the newscasters in that game, said that the unnamed governor of San Andreas was threatening to bomb Australia because of the earthquake. And this is a quote, despite scientific evidence that it wasn't their fault. So although there wasn't a reference of a war, there definitely is reference of extreme hostility, once again, between Australia and the United States. So in Grand Theft Auto 4, there's actually a lot of details about this war. The war is mentioned again in radio, confirming the conflict that occurred both in GTA 3, Vice City, and San Andreas continues. So on the radio station WKTT, which is a conservative radio station, a caller to the Richard Bastion show says, "This country is going to hell ever since we let those damn Australians back into this country." The quote finishes off by saying, "Everything has gone to crap. What the hell did we go to war with them in the first place?" So that was actually referenced on that radio show, and it also could have implied the unpopularity of wars like the Vietnam War, and the host actually replies, "I'll tell you why. We did it for freedom and for the value munitions contracts." So again, I think the radio host is making fun of maybe some of the people that believe like going to war is done for corrupt reasons, like making money. So that's one way to actually look at it. And there's also a radio advertisement for babiesovernight.com, which offers customers a funny but military inept Australian baby. And this perhaps implies that the war didn't go too well for the Australian side. And you can actually browse the in-game internet and access the actual site, babiesovernight.com. And it's possible to see an offer for an Australian baby that will love to play war but always loses. which also indicates that Australia was actually defeated by the American side during this war. I just think that's very cleverly done by Rockstar, and the way that they've kind of framed this war and ultimately who won. There's some slight references to say the Australians won, but there's definitely in the later games more evidence that says America actually won this war. So now let's move on to Grand Theft Auto 5. And while there doesn't seem to be any radio stations or commercials or advertisements, I personally believe there are 2 references to this war in game. So 2 out of these 3 references I think occur right outside of Fort Zancudo on the bridge leading up to the main entrance, you know, the gated off one. It's like right across the street from the beach, and it's a memorial sign to, I guess, some of the people that fought in this war. So the sign states, "In memory of the illustrious men of San Andreas who unwillingly gave their lives for their country." And then it says July 11th, 1974, with what looks to be a American flag styled star. Now, again, there isn't a whole lot of detail on here that would give away whether this was the Australian-American War, but the timeline does suggest that in the 1970s this was still going on, and this is really the only reference of violence and war in the Grand Theft Auto series. Now, I don't know what's significant about the date July 11th. I know that if you put that on like a calendar, it's 7-Eleven. So I'm not sure if they're making fun of like the convenience store / gas station or another reference. And also on the wall behind that, there's supposed to be like memorial bricks where you would see the names of like fallen soldiers or honored people. And all of them just say John Doe, which is the politically kind of correct term for just an average male name. So maybe Rockstar was going to fill this out with unique names. Maybe at the last minute decided that was either too much work or didn't make sense. So all the bricks on there actually just state John Doe. And if you go to the other side, you'll see this pretty cool memorial of what looks to be some retro fighter jets. And on the plaque itself, it says "In Memoriam," and it lists off a few stats. So for missions, it says 420, which I think is Rockstar poking fun at 420, which is the holiday. You guys know what I'm talking about. There was another one. It's like stories. It's 1256-8, killed 1526, lasers lost 102, and it states 2 distinguished unit citations dedicated June 1998. So if that is connected to the Australian War, that does mean that it was current for quite some time, all the way up until 1998, although that could be different. And then I do believe there is one more reference to this war that can actually be found within the seas of San Andreas. So thanks to a no water mod, we can actually discover this a little bit easier, but kind of towards the eastern side of the map, really towards the Humane Labs buildings. If you go out into the ocean, you can find a bunch of military equipment. I'm talking about a ton of military gear, whether it's army tankers, whether it's boxes full of explosives, boxes full of ammo. We can confirm it's like ammo because it says 7.62 millimeter cartridges on the side. You can see that there's like nuclear missiles underneath there as well. There's all sorts of tanks. And I'm not talking about Rhino tanks. I'm talking about tanks that you would kind of see in like the 1950s and 60s, maybe like Panzers or something like that. So you can actually go underwater and find all of these tanks if you want. If you're on PC, you can apply a no water mod, which will allow you to view this a little bit easier. And in my opinion, you can check out a lot of the things much more clearly without having to deal with breathing underwater or getting moved around by the waves or whatnot. So this is very interesting. And while there isn't any like insignias on the boxes or the tank that state this directly come from the American-Australian War, it can almost be implied that it does come from this, because throughout the entire Grand Theft Auto series, there is no other mention of another war. You know, the characters aren't impacted by the war in any way. It's just something that kind of goes on in the background that if you weren't looking out for it, you probably might not have noticed. Like, unless you were listening to that specific radio station in GTA Vice City or GTA 4 and caught that advertisement, would you even know that something like this was in the game? And to an extent, I had briefly heard of it, but I didn't know all the details until I did more research today. And what I found is just pretty incredible, that there was likely this massive war going on for maybe 20 or 30 or 40 years while Grand Theft Auto was happening, that was just casually occurring in the background. And I think that's perfect of Rockstar to do. I think that's extremely funny and just fits the GTA series ultimately so perfectly. But anyways, I'd love to hear from you guys in the comment section down below. Did you know about this Australian-American war? I thought it was pretty secretive, and I thought the details were relatively unknown, so I definitely wanted to include it in this video. If you did go on to enjoy, a like rating would of course be awesome. And also subscribe to my YouTube channel if you are new, or you like daily GTA 5 videos like this. Without the way, guys, like I said, thanks for watching. Take care, and I'll see you guys in the next video.